All right, everybody, let's get started. So a couple of housekeeping items, because after today, we only meet 4 more times and we are done with the ENGR 102. So I know, I'm getting emotional. All right. So, a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, attendance grades are up to date other than today's lecture, which I'll do later today or later this week. The assignment for week 12 is being graded. All right, I do want to draw everybody's attention to the table up here on the slide. The table up here shows that one of those assignments is knocked out. So the only thing we have left in this entire semester is homework 14, which is next week. That's our stress analysis homework. And then the final assembly. There is also this bonus assignment where really all it is just doing your course evals. I add a few points to your homework average at the end. A couple other housekeeping items. So there's no homework due today. There's no homework assigned today, because today all we're going to do is just continue our exercise in Inventor. What I want to do is focus on some additional topics with part creation. Just make sure that we're all comfortable with this. And then some more on generating drawings. I want to make sure that we're good with section drawings. And I also want to make one point on the vice assembly, which is your final assignment. I had some students in the prior section, they made a point that I think I missed a dimension. There's a dimension missing. So I'll actually point that out here on the screen. So if you look at the jaw, this is the jaw part of the final assembly. I didn't include how long like that part is right there. So what I'm going to do is upload like a corrected drawing to Blackboard with that dimension. But essentially, the dimension from here to here, like the width of that box is 1 3/8. So that's what that is. But I'll upload some clarified dimensions on Blackboard later today. So that was a mistake on my part, but you've got plenty of time on that. But just wanted to make you aware of that. Okay, any questions? All right, has everybody scanned the QR code? Okay, did everybody get a handout up here? Okay, they're all the same, so just grab one. If you didn't get a handout, don't be shy. Okay, all right. So today what we're going to do is we're going to continue our exercise with our wheel assembly. So if you recall, what we have been working on in class is this wheel assembly, and we have done the base. We built the base last time. Today, we're going to build the wheel. Okay, there are 2 more parts which we're not going to build together, which is the angle bracket and the axle. When we get to week 15, what I'm going to do is basically provide you all 4 part files, and we'll learn how to assemble them. So this is a pretty low pressure exercise today, because you're going to get the part files later on anyways. But with week 15, I'm going to show you how to assemble the parts and how to create assembly level drawings. Okay. So our goal today, though, is to build the wheel and to build this drawing. Okay. So we're going to do this today, and so we're going to have section views. We're going to go through part revolutions and whatnot. And so let's just get right to it. So I'm going to open Inventor. And I'm going to create a standard metric part, and I'm going to start by creating a sketch like we normally do. Now, instead of extruding that part, I'm going to revolve that part, but we'll get to that here in a bit. So let's create a new part. We're going to create a new metric part, and we're going to get to it. Okay. Now, I'm going to let you all sketch and whatnot on your own, but I do want to just make one clarifying point here. Okay, so this is the handout for today, and I want to make sure, because in case this is a little difficult to see on the physical handout in front of you, I want to make sure everybody sees this here on the screen. Okay, so what you're going to be drawing is this sort of like H-shaped cross-section, this H-shaped sketch. But I want to be crystal clear that there is also an additional vertical line right here that's by itself. So there's this vertical line, and then there's this H-shaped cross-section. You need both. You need that vertical line, because we need that in order to complete the revolution. Okay? So just make sure that you don't forget that when you're sketching. Okay? Now I'm going to go through the process of generating this sketch up here on the screen. You all can work on that, and we will get to it. All right? So again, this part is really no different than what we've been doing before. We're going to start a 2D sketch. We're going to start it on the XY plane, okay? And I'm going to create my sketch And again, you know how it is. We're going to create it somewhat blocky, and then we'll refine it here in a bit. So we'll go with this. I'll try and create it as close as I can. Try and get it kind of close. Okay, so there's that. That's sort of my rough estimate on that. And then we're going to have another line. I'm going to put the other line right here on the just the vertical axis. We'll do that. Okay. So that's good enough for our sketch. And now we're going to start dimensioning this. The only thing I'll say is as you're dimensioning it, if you dimension it and Inventor sort of doesn't like the way that you're dimensioning it, or the sketch starts to shift in one direction, you can always undo that dimension and place another one. And I really wish I could give you more specific advice on that, but really the behavior of the sketch sort of depends on how you choose to draw it. So if it's being a little wonky, maybe erase that dimension or undo that command and then place another one, and you'll work it out. And I actually sort of want you to sort of work that stuff out on your own, especially as you're working on your final assembly. Like, you're going to have to work that stuff out on your own because I'm not telling you how to model those. You're going to have to do it yourself. So I'm going to start placing some dimensions here. We'll make that one 50. Make this one 50. Okay. Let's make this one 20. Let's make this one 10. So for this 10 dimension, I'll just do that. Okay. And so I don't need to place one right here because if this is 50 and that's 20 and 10, we know that this one's 22. Or 20 as well. Not 22, but 20 also. Let's make this one 6. All right. Add this dimension here. Make that one 12. Okay, so it's starting to look a little bit more real. I'm going to hit escape a little bit and sort of pretty these up a little bit. Okay. All right. So what do we got going on here? So this dimension from here to here, that's 14. This one's 14 as well. I'll go ahead and dimension this one now, even though that one's not on the drawing, but I know that one's 14. Okay. And you can tell because if you do that one, it makes that one 38, which is correct. All right, so let's see. What else do we want to do? We want this dimension right here. Maybe I have to zoom in a little bit. Make that one 3. Do I need to do that one? Probably not. Let's see. Let's make this one from here. Oh, I need to go into the dimension command. Let's go from here to here. 5. Make this one from here to here. 5. And then lastly, let's make sure we have a dimension from the very, very outer bounds of the whole thing. Make that one 50. Okay. And that one should be good. I'll make it look just like it is on the handout by getting rid of that dimension and placing this constraint here of 38. Put the front view in, and there we go. Okay. So I'll give everybody a sec on this. Again, as you're dimensioning this, if your sketch starts to behave wonky, you can always just undo that dimension and then place another one. Okay. Again, I wish I could give you better, more specific guidance, but it just depends on how you draw the initial sketch. Like if you accept certain snaps that Inventor is trying to place, what's going to happen is Inventor is going to place different constraints on your sketch than maybe somebody sitting next to you. So. Okay. Everybody doing well on the sketch? How's everybody doing on the sketch? dimension, and then you just, yeah, you're like way ahead. Yeah, what you're doing is you're placing it and double clicking the dimension, then it brings it up. Okay, all right. Now what I'm going to do is, it looks like everybody's sort of on the same page with me on this, so I'm going to hit finish. When I hit finish, maybe I'll click my home button so I can bring it into screen. You can see that I've got the sketch and then I've got the line. What I'm going to do is instead of using the extrude command, I'm going to use the revolve command. Now the way that revolutions work is you pick an axis about which you want to revolve the part. And what it will do is it's almost like taking the sketch, putting it on a string and sort of spinning it, and you get an axis symmetric part. So revolutions are really good for wheels and things like that. So we'll hit the revolve command. So you can notice that Inventor's already figured out what profile to do, and you can see here in the dialog box the arrow around profile is sort of filled in, but for axis it's not. So I'm going to click this red arrow, and when it asks for the axis, I'm going to click this line, and now you can see, oh, you want to take that sketch and spin it around that line. And so when you spin it around that line, you get the wheel, okay? Now notice you can change the angle. Like for example, this is 360 degrees, so if I made it, I don't know, 120, you can see that it's revolving it, you know, not all the way. You know, if I did, let's say 180, it's doing half the way. But if I just do the full revolution, that's a 360 degree revolution. Hit OK, maybe hit my home button, and by golly gosh gee, there's my wheel. Okay, and you can always rotate this thing to sort of see what the wheel looks like, but there's my wheel. Pretty straightforward. Okay, now before I generate a drawing for this, I do want to make sure that I save this. So I'm going to hit File, Save As. If you're running Cameo, make sure that you place this in the X drive, specifically in the folder titled MS. But I'm going to call this wheel. Okay, so here's my wheel. Okay, and now I'm ready to generate a drawing. Okay, now again, this should be fairly simple if you understood how to do the drawings last time. There is going to be one difference with what we did last time. We're going to do a section view, and we didn't do that on Monday. But by and large, the drawing creation should be pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go through some of the basic stuff pretty quickly. So I'm going to hit File, New Drawing, and then for here I'm just going to use the template. Okay. Now before we actually start quote-unquote drawing, in other words, before we start placing views and placing objects in the drawing, I want to get the title block and I want to get the formatting, the sheet size, and all that stuff correct. And so we'll do two things. The first thing we'll do is we'll go into the eye properties and start changing some things. So I'm going to go into the Summary tab. I'm going to take the title of the drawing and I'm going to call it Wheel. I'm a rather inventive professor. For the author needs to be your initials. Okay, so I'm going to put ABC up here. They need to be your initials. The company, let's make the company Marshall University CECS. Just to hit apply, you can kind of see, if I close this, you can kind of see some of those are already popping up. I'm going to go back to iProperties and change some more. So for the project, the part number, we're going to do Engineering 102, Spring 2025. Hit apply there. You can see that show up in the drawing number. And then for status, okay, we're going to do check by. So you put your initials as the author, but for check by, you put my initials because I'm the person checking your work. So we'll put, so you could say like, I'm the boss of this engineering firm, if that makes any sense. So we'll put check by here and put my initials here for approval. Maybe we'll put check the date right there. So we hit OK. I've checked it and I've approved it. You drew it. Okay. All right. So we'll close that. Now the info's in the title block, but what we do need to do is change the size of the paper. Okay. So I'm going to right-click the sheet, hit Edit Sheet, make it a sheet size B. Remember, a B is an 11 by 17. We'll hit OK. And then I'm going to go into Drawing Resources, and I'm going to apply the smaller title block. So instead of the large, I'm going to double click the small one. And again, that gives me just a little bit more room to draw with. So I got a little bit more space on the page. I mean, this is 11 by 17, so that title block is going to easily be legible on the sheet. Okay. Everybody good so far? So you're going to hit cancel, and then you're going to go in and edit, like go in and edit the sketch. So you can go in and edit this sketch. Wait, oh, the sketch looks good. Now let's go back to the revolution. So the axis needs to be, click that, needs to be that line. No problem. Okay. All right. Everybody good? Okay. So now that we've got our sheet formatted, we're going to start placing some views. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to place an ISO view. So we'll hit a base view. Let's click the home button here on the view. So I'm clicking the little home button right here to place the ISO view. And I'm going to stick that ISO view here in the top right corner. Just so, again, if you have room on engineering schematics, it's kind of nice to place an ISO view just to give the contractor, the fabricator, the manufacturer just an idea of what it is that they're going to be making. So we'll hit OK. There's my ISO view. And then we'll do one more view. We're going to do a top view. So just a little background. If you remember, one of the things that we said in engineering drawings is that you want to provide basically as little information as possible, not as more, like you don't want to provide superfluous information or repetitive information, okay? So instead, what you want to do is provide only what you need. This is a wheel. Really, the only thing we need is just a view of it, but more importantly, a section view. We want to know what's going on inside. I mean, that's how we made the part. So we'll do a base view. Let's click my little wheel up here to go to the top. We'll put that right there. And now what we need is a section view, okay? Now, a section view is when you take a samurai sword or lightsaber, if you happen to be a sci-fi fan, and you cut through the part, and you're looking inside the part, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a section view. Now, just so you're aware, when we create this section view, I'm going to purposefully create the section inaccurately, and then we'll add precision to it later. Again, it's this whole idea of shape before size. So I'm going to go up here, so see where it has base, projected, this, we're going to go to section view. So we're going to cut through one of these views. So the first thing Inventor's asking here on the very, very bottom over here is it says select a view or a sketch. So I'm going to select this view, okay? Then what it says is enter the endpoints. So all I'm going to do is draw a line from here to here. And then when I right click and click continue, now you can see this is where I've cut through. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to sort of stick it, I don't know, like somewhere over here. Just hit OK. And that's my section view. So this is like if I were to take the samurai sword or lightsaber and cut through that little line right there and look, that's what I would see. Now that's not what I want it to look like at the very end, but I've at least got the section view created. Now what we need to do is add some specificity to that. Okay? So how am I going to do that? Okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some constraints to the section view. Okay? Now, how do I do that? Let's look over here. Let's look at your model tree. Look at all these given parts. Okay, and look right here. See where I have view 1 and view 2? Look at view 2. View 2 is that top view. And then associated with that top view, I've got a section view. See where it says sketch 1? Let's double click sketch 1. So here's sketch 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start to place some constraints on that sketch. Now, so that everybody's with me on the same page, before we start placing these constraints, I'm going to add a single point to the drawing, and you'll see why here in a bit. So I'm going to go to point, and I want to add a single point. Where do I want that point? Right in the middle of the wheel. Okay? There's a reason I'm placing that point. We're going to use it here in a bit. Okay? All right, so we'll hit escape to get out of that point command. Okay. Now, I drew this line, and it's kind of a mess. Okay? When I samurai sword or lightsaber through this, I want it to be perfectly up and down, right? I want it to be a vertical cut, a vertical lightsaber cut through the wheel. How do I ensure that the line is vertical? I'm going to start to use some of those constraints, okay? Now, we've used dimensional constraints. We've used coincident point constraints, but let's just sort of hover the mouse over these a little bit. Coincident, collinear, we've got parallel, perpendicular, horizontal. Ooh, we have a vertical constraint. Let's click vertical constraint and click this line. Boom. So now what it's done is it's forced that line to be a vertical line. Okay? So I've enforced that mechanism. Okay? Now what? Okay? Well, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a dimensional constraint. So I'm going to force the dimension of the line. And I'm going to tell you, there's no real magic to this part, by the way. So I'm going to apply a constraint. Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Take a step back. Why does that say 5.112? Because I didn't change the units. This is a very easy thing that's going to happen to you maybe in assembly land. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. How do you fix that? You go to Tools, you go to Document Settings, change the units. Remember, we changed the units on the part file, but we didn't change the units on the drawing file. So we're in drawing mode land. We got to make sure those are good too. So I'm going to hit Close. Now I'm going to go back to my sketch, the sketch tab, go to the dimension, and I'm going to place a dimensional constraint of 120, okay? And is there any real magic to making the line 120? Not really. The reason why I'm using 120 is if you go back to the dimensions of the wheel is 100 millimeters in diameter, so I'm using 120 just to make sure that the section line fully goes on the bounds outside of the section view. Like I want it to be longer than the section or than the part that I'm cutting through, so that I completely encapsulate the section. Okay. Now my last constraint is I'm going to do a coincident point constraint, because not only do I want the line to be vertical, but I want it to be centered through the center of that wheel. So I'm going to do a coincident point constraint to where the center of that line is at that point that we created. Remember, we created that point that was at the center of the wheel. Okay? So now, if I hit finish, watch what happens to the section view when I hit finish. I hit finish, and boom. So now the section view is directly through the middle of the wheel, perfectly through the middle like we want it to be. Neat, orderly, precise. Okay? And so now I can start placing dimensional information. Okay? So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to my little reference here at the back, just make sure I get all of these. So maybe I'll work with the top view first, this view over here on the right. We'll place some dimensions. We'll do an outer dimension right there of 100 millimeters. Remember, anytime you click, you just hit OK right here. Click that, hit OK. Okay, now let's work over here on the section view. Let's see what we got. We're going to make this line here, make that, 38. We'll do a dimension from point to point, make that 50. Okay. Let's do this 10. I'm going to do that point to that point, maybe put it right there. Remember, you can always change the position of where the text is later. Okay, I'm just getting the dimensions there. We can pretty it up here in a little bit. All right, we'll do, let's see, we'll do this line right here. And then let's do this point to that point. We'll put that right there. Now here's one thing that's kind of nifty is Inventor's pretty smart, okay? Watch what happens here. Watch what happens when I click this line right here. I want to dimension this line. Inventor knows that's not a line, that's the diameter of this circle. And if you notice, it actually said, wait, that's a 24 millimeter diameter. It understood that that was a diameter. That's pretty neat that it figured that out. Now what I'll do is I'll hit the escape key a couple times, and then I'll start clicking and dragging. Maybe I'll do something about like that. Maybe I'll take this line, put it about like that. Take this line, take this line right here, maybe stick it about like that. This one about like that. And then, by the way, you can always at the very end, maybe I don't like the position, maybe I want to move this over a little bit. Maybe I want to scooch this a bit. Move that down. I mean, you can always scooch the entire views, and the annotations will go along with it. You're more than have the ability to do that. That part is not an issue. The annotations will go along. And basically, when it's all said and done, and you get this drawing to the place where you like it, we're ready to print. And again, printing, I'll just say it, in Inventor, it's a lot easier because all you have to do, just go to File, Print, and make sure that your properties are set to where we're printing on an 11 by 17. And if you can't find 11 by 17 or ANSIB, use a tabloid. Tabloid's another name for 11 by 17, so we'll go with tabloid. Okay. Print that. I'm going to print it on the desktop, call it a wheel drawing. I already did this in the 11 o'clock section, so we'll replace it. Go to the desktop. And by golly gosh gee, there it is. Pretty easy, right? So hopefully the vice assembly doesn't seem that scary because, I mean, there's like you have to generate 5 pages, but it doesn't take that long to generate the pages. It's pretty quick, you know. So, all right. With that, I'll just say that's actually all I have for the lecture. If some of you are already finished, you can leave. If not, if you're still working on it, I'm going to stick around, obviously, and help you work through the sketches and whatnot and the revolutions. But I'll be around. But with that, I'm just going to pull the QR code up one more time. Again, no homework this week. But, hey, one final thing before I let you go. If you were not here on Monday and you missed the vice assembly drawings, if you missed those handouts from Monday, I do have extra ones. And, again, going back to the vice assembly, I will post and upload with some updates on this drawing just to make sure you have all the information needed. That's all I got, everybody.